Translation. O Lord, O Supreme Eternal, by expanding your plenary portion, you have created the subtle bodies of the living entities through the agency of your external energy, which is agitated by time. Thus, the mind entraps the living entity in unlimited varieties of desires to be fulfilled by the Vedic directions of karma kanda, fruit of activity, and the 16 elements. Who can get free from this entanglement unless he takes shelter at your lotus feet? Purport by His Divine Grace, ISKCON's founder, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. If the hand of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is present in everything, where is the question of being released from material engagement to spiritual blissful life? Indeed, it is a fact that Krishna is the source of everything, as we understand from Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. All the activities in both the spiritual and material world are certainly conducted by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the agency of either the material or spiritual nature. As further confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 10, Mayadakshina prakrite suyate sa characharam. Without the direction of the Supreme Lord, material nature cannot do anything. It cannot act independently. Therefore, in the beginning, the living entity wanted to enjoy the material energy, and to give the living entity all facility, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, created this material world and gave the living entity the facility to concoct different ideas and plans through the mind. These facilities offered by the Lord to the living entity constitute the 16 kinds of perverted support in terms of the knowledge-gathering senses, the working senses, the mind, and the 5 material elements. The wheel of repeated birth and death is created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but to direct the bewildered living entity in progress toward liberation, according to varied stages of advancement, different directions are given in the Vedas. Chandomayam. If one wants to be elevated to the higher planetary systems, he may follow the Vedic directions, as the Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 25. Yanti deva prata devan, pritan yanti patir prata, bhutani yanti bhuteja, yanti mam yajino pimam. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. Those who worship ancestors go to the ancestors, and those who worship me will live with me. The real purpose of the Vedas is to direct one back home, back to Godhead. But the living entity, not knowing the real goal of his life, wants to go sometimes here and sometimes there, and do sometimes this and sometimes that. In this way, he wanders throughout the entire universe, imprisoned in various species, and thus engaging in various activities for which he must suffer the reactions. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prashade Pai Bhakti Lata Beach. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 19, Lord Chaitanya's teachings to Rupa Goswami, verse 151. The fallen, conditioned living entity, trapped by the external energy, loiters in the material world. But if by good fortune he meets a bona fide representative of the Lord who gives him the seed of devotional service and if he takes advantage of such a guru or representative of God, he receives the Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of devotional service. If he properly cultivates Krishna consciousness, he is then gradually elevated to the spiritual world. The ultimate conclusion is that one must surrender to the principles of Bhakti Yoga, for then one will gradually attain liberation. No other method of liberation from the material struggle is at all possible. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmritam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Svapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu relished hearing in the Gambhira, the place where he personally demonstrated, particularly in the last years of his manifest presence on this planet, the highest principles of devotional service. So it is very noteworthy and interesting to understand how one of the Lord's most cherished forms of hearing and chanting, Shravanam Kirtanam, was in the company of his most confidential devotee, Sri Gadadhar Pandit, hearing the pastimes of Prahlāda Mahārāja and Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva. Also was noted the pastimes of Dhruva Mahārāja, which in the fourth canto is noted as being so potent and powerful that it immediately inspires transcendental piety in all those who hear the activities of Dhruva Mahārāja. Dhruva Mahārāja, of course, as a 5-year-old boy, was insulted by his stepmother for his attempt to not so much ascend or be heir to the throne of his father, but just as a 5-year-old boy to climb up on the lap of his father, who happened to be the king, who at the time happened to be sitting on the throne. And he was so much disturbed by that insult that he had this incredible determination to get a kingdom better even than his grandfather, who was Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma has the most fabulous lifespan, the most fabulous opulence, and lives in the topmost planet in this universe. How could one get something not only just equal, but even better than that? So he was recommended to approach the Lord, who can fulfill all desires. And of course, in his case, when he received the Lord's darshan and blessing, he realized that what he wanted was compared to a piece of broken glass compared to receiving a valuable diamond. Now, we could arguably say that the pastimes of Prahlāda Mahārāja and Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva push the transcendental envelope, so to speak, that the conditions on all levels were very, very extreme. that what is the prelude to the appearance of Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva. Hiranyakashipu terrorizes the universe. He terrorized, as we just heard, all the demigods came to offer their prayers to try to pacify Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva, including even Lord Brahma and even Goddess Lakshmi Devi, who were unable to pacify the Lord in his great exhibition of anger. Adbhuta Shringam, assuming a most wonderful, Adbhuta, never before seen form. That form could not be ascertained to be either that of a man or that of a lion. Of course, Hiranyakashipu, it's described, he was one of the Lord's transcendental attendants in Vaikuntha, Jaya and Vijaya, who checked the four Kumaras from entering into Vaikuntha. And the four Kumaras immediately took them to task. This type of discordant mentality is there in the material world, where people are of a demoniac mentality. This is mine and this is not yours. This is for me and you can't have it. So in the spiritual world, everyone is fully, spontaneously and 100% engaged in satisfying the Lord. This sets the stage for perfect harmony. So there's no need of door locks and security guards and CIA agents and KGB and all this type of political espionage and politics and diplomacy. But ultimately, the reason that Jaya and Vijaya did that was because the Lord wanted to have a very good fight. And who is going to be competent to fight with the Lord except one of his own men, someone from his own entourage? So ultimately, the whole thing was a great stage for the Lord's enjoying fun and sportsmanship. But when the Vaikuntha attendant of the Lord comes down and assumes the form of a demon, they were given the chance: you can have 7 births favorable to me, or you can come back quickly in 3 births by acting inimically to me. We want to come back as soon as possible, so we'll come and be demons and fight with you. Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and Shishupal and Dantavakra. But then they had an extra encore performance on the stage as Jaya and Vijaya. No, excuse me, as Jagai and Madai. So, becoming the demon Hiranyakashipu, everyone in the entire universe was subjected to his tyrannical rule. And it's interesting to note, in the chapter just prior, 8, Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva slays the king of the demons, and the attempt of the demigods to offer their prayers to pacify Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva, how he couldn't be pacified. And ultimately, it's because all the demigods, even up to Lord Brahma, you can read in the 9th chapter, the 3rd canto, Lord Brahma's prayers for creative energy, they're described as Sakāma devotees. They're devotees, but they have material desires in mind. In other words, they have interests that are separate from the Lord. And Prabhupada writes in the purport in that section, therefore they cannot satisfy the Lord perfectly. Whereas the niṣkāma devotees, they have no material desires or no separate interest in mind. They can satisfy the Lord perfectly. And that we will see by and by Prahlāda Maharaj was able to do. Also, just from a numerical analyzation of prayers in the Bhagavatam, Prahlāda began his prayers on verse 8, just after verse 7. He fixed his mind and sight upon Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva with full attention, in complete trance, with a fixed mind. He began to offer his prayers in love. This is interesting to note. All of these culminative and very high qualifications: full attention, complete trance, samadhi, with fixed mind. And how is he doing this? What was the overall symptom of these high qualifications? Love in a faltering voice. Prabhupada says in one place, one should always strive to develop love of Godhead, and that will solve all contending problems. Or everything required is contained within transcendental love for the Supreme Personality. So here we are on verse 21, and Prahlāda Maharaj continues in triumph all the way up to verse number 50. 42 verses. And each one, just like today, is power-packed with such realization. Now, it's interesting to note that in many of these verses, majority of the verses, he's pointing out not just the folly of material life, understanding the conditioned soul's futile attempt to try to be happy in this material world and their suffering, but it's he presents his feeling throughout that I wish to save them. I wish to help them. And he gives credit, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, without receiving the direction and guidance of the Guru Krishna Prasade Bhai, Bhakti Lata Bij, it is impossible to, what does it say here? Who can get free from this entanglement without taking shelter at your lotus feet? That Lord Nṛsiṁhadeva offered him a benediction, and he said that, I wish to continue serving my spiritual master. So, again, back to the third canto, chapter 9. How are the niṣkāma devotees able to satisfy the Lord perfectly? By becoming missionaries on the Lord's behalf. And Prabhupada says there, sometimes, rarely, the Lord comes personally for missionary activities, as he did as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But mostly, he entrusts this work to his niṣkāma, pure devotees. And Prabhupada says, this is the sign of the Lord's satisfaction with his niṣkāma devotees, that he wants them. Why does he come only rarely, once in a while, as Lord Chaitanya? And actually, the reason that Lord Chaitanya came for inaugurating the Dharma for the age, the Yuga Dharma of Harinam Sankirtan, the Dharma for the age is so that, as we are hearing here, everyone can progress spiritually. Vedic directions are given. But the Lord primarily came for his own confidential internal reasons, which we could say weren't really motivated to enact the Yuga Dharma. But simultaneously with the Lord coming to fulfill his confidential purposes, the Dharma for the age is given as a byproduct. Not mere, but anything the Lord does is very, very purposeful. His one action accomplishes many, many amazing purposes all at the same time. That's one reason why tatenu kampam shushukshamana. We should never blame the Lord for any condition of life that we find ourselves in. That is, if we are strictly following, especially for initiated devotee. In the first canto, Maharaja Yudhiṣṭhira was encouraged ultimately by Bhīṣmadeva. The Lord had it even that he himself could not pacify Maharaja Yudhiṣṭhira. Such a great loss of life. He was mortified. Couldn't be pacified. To install me on the throne as a king, as the emperor. So many people had to die for that. Bhīṣmadeva could satisfy him. And Prabhupada says in that section, if one is in accord with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, there is no reason for lamentation or feeling disparity or sad, no matter how trying the conditions of life. So if we act like nonsense and we break the principles and we go away from devotional service and something bad happens to us, we can't blame that on the Lord or say that, oh, this is a divine arrangement. That's just my own nonsensical foolishness that I'm getting the reaction for. You know, just like, you know, somebody is up in a tree branch and he's sawing the branch, but he's on the other side of the branch. And somebody's going to say, hey, you know, what are you doing? You know, hey, leave me alone, you stupid. You leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. And then they fall down and they, you know, crack their head open. And then you can say they may be in a humble state of mind. So how is that working out for you? You know? So the Lord wants to give credit to his devotees. He gave credit to Bhīṣmadeva. He wants to give credit to the preachers. Just Arjuna, you become the instrument and become glorious as the hero. I've taken a vow not to even take up a weapon during the battle of Kurukshetra. But Arjuna chose right. I won't take Krishna's armies. Duryodhana could have that. I'll have Krishna himself. And wherever there is Krishna, there is all victory, everything. And Krishna has come in the form of his holy name. In the 9th canto, in regards to the other incarnation of Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, he was equipped with all his army and soldiers, had all the modern warfare weapon, mystic mantra weapons. Hanuman and the monkey legions, could only throw stones and tree trunks and mountain peaks and whatever they could pick up off the ground. It was only Lord Ram and Lakshman who shot some arrows. But because they were condemned by the curse of Mother Sita and they were fighting on the cause of Lord Ram, Ravana and his entire everything were destroyed. So there's two types of strength. Strength gathered by our own material resources and strength that comes from the spiritual energy, which is always superior. So Prabhupada, again, in the 3rd canto, describes how the position of the preacher on the Lord's behalf to give Krishna consciousness purely to the fallen conditioned souls puts one in the most confidential position and endows one with the most advanced facility, the greatest and most potent facility to achieve the highest levels of pure devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada has given us this sadhana, or has recommended this is the most potent method of devotional service individually, and if at all possible and feasible, collectively. That life should be so molded that we're always placing ourselves in a position where Krishna consciousness can be quantitatively and qualitatively, those two terms are very safely intermixed in Krishna consciousness to others. You know, materially, we quantitatively want to give something out, but quantitatively it might be very low class. Just like we see the multi-billion-dollar industries like McDonald's, Walmart, Coca-Cola, you can think of other things. They're giving out a lot, but what are they giving? You know, they're giving repeated birth and death. They're giving useless material sense gratification. Of course, Walmart, if you buy something that's, like we bought stuff at Walmart, right? Yeah. And we use it in Krishna's service. But more or less, you know, whereas we're giving out the most qualitative thing. one fruit of love of Godhead. Prabhupada said, if he reads one line, if he just touches the book, he's saved from transmigrating into the 8,400,000 species of life. He hears the holy name just once. He's the best man in the whole group. And there's just a few of us giving out this prema dan, the treasure of love of Godhead. But that qualitative distribution, even though quantitatively compared to McDonald's and Coca-Cola, is very small. And Prabhupada would say, when challenged like that, how many followers do you have? You're such a small little sect. He said, one moon in the sky is more valuable than millions of nonsense stars. So Prahlāda Maharaj, again and again throughout these 42 verses, is thinking of the fallen conditioned souls. And this is very, very instructive. And we see, to think of the fallen conditioned souls and their plight, in other words, to think of others, is the best way to get off the platform of worrying about me. And this is the way to satisfy the Lord, especially in this material world, because this material body, oh Lord, this material body is a lump of ignorance in the senses. They are networks of paths leading unto death. This material body is given to us for sense gratification, for forgetfulness of Krishna. Prabhupada would say that in the prison, you don't have to make an analyzation. Anyone who's in the prison, you can understand that he's there because he has a criminal mentality. Otherwise, why would he be in prison? So this material body must be engaged in pure devotional service under the guidance of the pure devotee, spiritual master, the preacher. Otherwise, we will be misled and we will be acting against our own self-interest. So here in today's verse, he's describing how the living entity is put into the external energy, given their subtle bodies, the mind. Prabhupada, he was speaking to one social worker, government person in Perth, Australia in 1975. I was just hearing, and Prabhupada was saying that the main problem is the mind. People's minds are out of control, and they're following the dictate of their mind, and it is bringing them to ultimate ruination. So the first step is to purify the contaminated, the diseased mind. And when the mind is made healthy by always thinking of Krishna, also Prahlāda Maharaj in the 5th canto, what is that prayer? May there be good fortune throughout the universe, and may all envious persons be pacified. By thinking of each other's welfare, they will become open. When one becomes Krishna conscious, one becomes liberal in his social dealings. That doesn't mean that, we embrace yato mat tato pat, and you're okay and I'm okay, and and I love you. Prabhupada said to one Mayavada personal Swami, was saying, Swamiji, I love you. He says, yes, I love you too, but not this type of skin love. Liberal in that you understand that Krishna is in everyone's heart. Actually, the Mayavadis, for all their big talk, they're not acting for others' benefit. So they're not actually liberal. For all their talk of universal love and brotherhood, they're actually very, very stingy and miserly. Because a real Mahatma, Prabhupada said Mahatma is not one who has a big beard and long hair, but a Mahatma is acting on behalf of Krishna and distributing Krishna's instructions. And Krishna's instructions is like Prahlāda Maharaj is saying, you're not the material body, you're not your mind, you have to control your mind, you're in a very dangerous position in the material world, you have to surrender to Krishna, You have to practice Krishna consciousness. This is mercy, to instruct people and distribute this knowledge. Unlimited desires to be fulfilled by the Vedic directions of karma kanda. We say, what is that? The 8th offense in chanting Hare Krishna: consider the chanting of Hare Krishna
as one of the
vicious ritualistic activities which are far from the Vedas as fruit of activities, karma kanda. And we see that most people's idea of religion is that God, there's some sense God-fearing, we're a God-fearing people, right? That's how this country was founded, God-fearing people. And we see a place like Boston, New England, this is where the Europeans, particularly the English people, came first. And there's so many churches. In a city like Boston, there's churches, even some of these old buildings, maybe their first church burned down in the late 1700s, a new one was built, but the whole ministry was founded in the 1600s. But they're coming here for better sense gratification. God is the order supplier. If you believe in this doctrine, then you'll be blessed and you'll have a very good, successful material life. You'll have many children, you'll conquer. I saw one road sign for a church in the last couple of months, and it was actually horrible. It said, Jesus paid and you get to keep the change. And Prabhupada was touring in Mexico City, and his servant secretary, Shyama-Sundar, who has just brought forth his volume 2 of Chasing Rhinos. A very good read. Shyama-Sundar Prabhu, one of the first devotees who joined Srila Prabhupada and was quite a rugged individualist who took the challenge on behalf of Srila Prabhupada to do something wonderful. And so anyway, they're in Mexico in 1972, and Prabhupada is staying in a room, and they're very devout Catholics in Mexico, and there's a crucifix, a big one, with Jesus in agony on the cross, and Prabhupada says, calls Shyama-Sundar in, Prabhupada's emotional, says, please take this out of here. They've killed their spiritual master so they can go on sinning. And he said, we don't want to see the spiritual master in such a position. It's heartbreaking. We want to honor, we want to glorify, we want to make the spiritual master comfortable. We want to give him all facility so that he can give out more Krishna consciousness. So, karma kanda, jnana kanda, kevala vishera bandha. That if one thinks that real religion and real dharma is these things, then they're drinking from pots of poison. And the result will be that one will wander in this material world in many different species of life and eat many abominable, horrible things. So, Prahlāda Maharaj is warning that we should be very mindful and go beyond that. And Srila Prabhupada champions this in the purport, Yanti Deva Prata Devan, Krishna's statement. If you worship the demigods, you'll go. If you worship ghosts and spirits, as most people are doing, worshiping things in the mode of ignorance, that's where you'll go. Actually, anything that anyone can express or manifest is under the control of various demigods, no matter how modern, cool, hip, or fashionable, or slick it might seem. It's just all hackneyed materialism. Whereas only those who worship the Lord's pure devotees, as we're worshiping Tulsi Devi, please allow me entrance into the pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Make me your own maidservant. Make me a follower of the topmost liberated pure devotees of Krishna. That's the real prayer. That is Mukta Sangha. Kaler dosa nade rajan hasti ek mahadgunan kirtanadeva krishnasya mukta sangha param brajet. This Kali Yuga, especially is an ocean of faults. Everything is, you can read in the 12th canto, 2nd chapter, symptoms of the age of Kali Yuga. Horrible. But this is one of the last instructions that Maharaj Parikshit is going to hear from Shukadeva Goswami. The bite from the snake bird Tarksha is imminent, moments away. So every word of the Bhagavatam is extremely valuable and potent, but coming down to the finish line, to the end of the wire, saying this Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, but there's one good quality, which makes it the topmost facility, so that the demigods are waiting to take birth in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, because simply by taking to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, chanting Hare Krishna, Golokera Premadan Harinam Sankirtan, one gets the full liberated Mukta Sangha association, and not just back to Godhead. Brajet goes to Braja, Goloka Vrindavan Dham. So that the pure devotee of Lord Chaitanya is giving, Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prashade by Bhakti Lata Bij. It's a seed, but it's a whole feast, a fully ripened fruit all at the same time. Because the goal is assigned, we're given the seed, but it's described that the spirit, that you can be given a full feast, sit down, very nice, or Krishna Prasad will give you all the ingredients, will give you all the groceries, and now you cook the feast. And that allows you to show your love and devotion for the Lord by doing that. Chaturvida Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious foodstuffs, which are analyzed to that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sung. So when the spiritual, we'll wrap it up here. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasadam, he is satisfied. So we get the ingredients to make the feast. We get the seed of devotional service, and we water that seed very nicely by hearing and chanting the glorious Bhakti Shastras, especially given by Srila Prabhupada. One time, I believe it was on a morning walk, one disciple said to Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Vinod Thakur is my favorite Vaishnava author. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, your second favorite. In other words, Srila Prabhupada's books are most important for us to always have contact with and by reading every single day. Srila Prabhupada is, as said in GBC resolution, the preeminent Shiksha Guru for everyone in ISKCON. So we were speaking with 2 devotees who live all the way in Portland, Maine last night. One of their concerns was that they don't have much association, and I was trying to encourage them that you have all association with the greatest devotee, Srila Prabhupada, in his books, especially Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which he undertook in the early 1960s, knowing that this would fulfill the order of his spiritual master, who told him not just if you ever get money, print books, but write books. Prabhupada was even maybe criticized by godbrothers, why don't you distribute our spiritual master's books? But Srila Prabhupada was given the order and mandate to present Krishna consciousness so that everyone all over the world could understand bhakti, surrender to Krishna, how to engage in Krishna consciousness very, very easily. And Prabhupada would say to his disciples, particularly to his leading disciples, to relieve me from so many problems. One time early on, he was saying to Roy Ram, Gargamuni, your letter is full of problems, this letter is full of problems. Who's going to satisfy my problems? And Prabhupada would go back and forth. All right, I'm just now retired from all management, and I'm just going to translate books. And then some other problem would come up. And actually in Shruti Kirti's book, if you want, What is the Difficulty, there was, the devotees got together and said, Prabhupada will relieve you of all management, and Prabhupada chastised them. Who are you to tell your spiritual master, when he's going to stop managing? I'm perfectly smart and competent enough to know when I want to do that. I don't need you to instruct me. But anyway, Prabhupada was working a double ship, preaching and working all day, managing his movement without internet or even telephone, but by letter, all over the world. And when all the devotees, young men, 40, 50 years younger, were like completely exhausted trying to keep up with Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada would rise after only 2 or 3 hours of sleep and write his Bhaktivedanta purports to the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam all the way till dawn. Nice. So how potent these books are. So all right, so we've gone over time. The verse, once again, verse number 22 of the 9th chapter, Prahlāda Maharaj pacifies the Lords with prayers. Verse 21, actually. O Lord, O Supreme Eternal, by expanding your plenary portion, you have created the subtle bodies of the living entities through the agency of your external energy, which is agitated by time. Thus the mind entraps the living entity in unlimited varieties of desires to be fulfilled by the Vedic directions of karma kanda, fruit of activity, and the 16 elements. Who can get free from this entanglement unless he takes shelter at your lotus feet? Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Not to bar Garanga.
So recently, someone was telling us that they were glad that they sometimes see different books than Prabhupada's books, like in our storage or being distributed, because if we just distribute Prabhupada's books, sometimes they'll think it's like an antiquated thing and that it doesn't like that means he was doing something, but then he didn't be able to empower anyone else. And I was just wondering, it sounded kind of weird to me. Is
yes, weird? I agree. What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter? Now I'm going to say to you the same thing that I spoke to the sun god. What is yoga? Yoga prokta prasana. What is the exact translation?
I can paraphrase it.
Okay. So, if you repeat the words, infallible words of Krishna and Krishna's pure devotees, which are beyond time, which are eternal, then it's never antiquated, but it's actually always modern, and it's always the right, hippest, coolest, most right thing to do. Whereas those who claim that the words of Krishna and his pure devotees, because they were written 40 years ago or 500 years ago or 5,000 years ago, are out of date, they themselves are out of date because they are under the modes of material nature and are being whipped by time.
That's amazing.
So who's crazy? Like Srila Prabhupada's first purport pamphlet that was being distributed. That's the trick of the illusory energy, especially with young people. They think they're very hip and cool, and who are these old people, and there's a story Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would say, the wise old monkey. You all know the story? In New York we know the story. So there was once a king who had a little zoo arranged for the entertainment of his young son, the princes. There were sheep, and the princes would ride on them. And there was a pack of domesticated monkeys, and they were being fed delicacies from the palace kitchen, and they were, dressed in nice little velvet shorts, like little Lord Fauntleroy, and had little caps, and had nice little beds, luxury. So the wise monkey, the elder monkey, he was actually very intelligent and well read in the scriptures. He saw that the palace sheep, they would go into the nearby palace kitchen unrestrained and would start eating whatever they would find. And the palace cooks, they would pick up, something to beat the sheep. Now, one time the king, the wise old monkey noticed that, there weren't any utensils around. So one of the palace cooks, he picked up a piece of wood, from the wood pile, and to beat the sheep to get it out of the kitchen. Now, this wood pile wasn't always being replenished with wood. So the monkey thought, well, if there's no utensils, then the palace cook will pick up a piece of wood out of the fire. And without thinking, it'll hit the sheep. And if it happens at a time of year when the sheep has not just been sheared, when it has big wool, then that sheep is going to burst into flames and is going to go by into the nearby horse stable, roll in the hay, set the whole horse stable on fire, and some of the king's best horses are going to be, burned to death or have very serious burns. The king will be given this news, and he'll summon his veterinarian expert named Sally Hotra. What should be done? It says that there's an ancient expert veterinarian called Sally Hotra that the current veterinarian will quote. Says that burns on horses can be soothed and healed by the inner muscle fat or skin or tallow of monkeys. The king will say, wonderful, we have a whole pack of monkeys. Round them up, skin them alive, and start the treatment for my horses. So the wise old monkey, seeing all this, he gathered all the monkeys together in a place like this where the palace cooks and the sheep are always at odds with each other. We, the monkeys, will meet with our certain death and destruction. We should all leave here immediately and go back to forest life. So all the young monkeys, they looked at him and said, are you crazy? Because you're getting old, you're now senile, and therefore you're talking like a lunatic and a blithering idiot. We're not going to leave here. We're living in the lap of luxury like this, to go live in the forest and sleep in the freezing cold and eat detestable berries. So no matter how much the elder monkey tried to explain, they wouldn't listen to him, and he just said, all right, I'm leaving. I don't want to see all your deaths. So very soon thereafter, exactly as the wise old monkey predicted, everything came to pass. So the purport that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says is that one who thinks that the elder spiritual master is under some type of delusion and doesn't know what is hip and cool and is modern just by sticking to the standard shastric methods and is not as innovative as doing all kinds of modern and hip and cool things as we are, thus deviating the sampradaya, they will meet with a disastrous end. They will be destroyed. So that would be one answer we could give to such people. Now, at the same time, authorized books coming in pursuance of Prabhupada's version, that's actually continuing the glorification of Srila Prabhupada. It's not taking away from what Srila Prabhupada has given. But they should be understood to be supplementary, and that Prabhupada's books are primary. He's written his books for the guidance of this Sankirtan movement for the next 10,000 years.
Is it possible to actually make spiritual advancement?
Can't hear you.
Is it possible to make spiritual advancement just through Prabhupada's books?
Yes.
Without sadhusanga at all?
Without sadhusanga?
Yeah.
In extreme cases, yes. Not that. Prabhupada writes in the fourth canto that anyone who thinks he can be aloof from the Krishna consciousness movement is living in a great hallucination because it's not possible. That's the Krishna consciousness movement with right association. There was the question by Prabhupada's one of his first disciples, Yamuna Devi, and her god sister Dina Tarini, who had started their own woman's ashram in southern Oregon. And the devotees in Los Angeles, some of the leaders were criticizing them for being separate. And it reached a climax with Prabhupada's visit there in 1976. And they came down from Oregon to meet with Prabhupada, and they were thinking that Yamuna and Dina Tarini, that they were going to be criticized, because all the other leaders were criticizing them. And the question of association came up, and Prabhupada said, association can be 2 or 200, but it has to be favorable. If it's 2 and it's favorable, very good. If it's 200 and it's unfavorable, not good. And then he gave specific instruction to them and saw the efficacy and beauty of their transcendental association, and instructed them that you should remain together and serve Krishna for the rest of your lives, which they did. There's Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada even would say that if all of you leave, then because the books have been distributed, they will create another set of devotees. There's stories of devotees getting Prabhupada's books and immediately chanting 16 rounds. One devotee in Russia never just gotten the book, and he started his own temple.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. How did they do that?
Or there's a story, old story from New Vrindaban, that in one laundromat, in one hot Georgia parking lot, there was a welder in his welding truck, and he was doing his laundry, and he was eating a watermelon on a hot day, and it slipped out of his fingers and fell into the garbage pail in the laundromat, which had all the the dust and lint and discarded laundry packets in there. So I'm not going to lose such a good tasting watermelon. I'm hot. And he reached in to get his watermelon, but instead he pulled out a Bhagavad Gita.
Oh my God.
And he started reading the Bhagavad Gita, and it said how you have to surrender to the spiritual master. And somehow the address was from New Vrindaban, and he showed up with his welding truck and said, I'm here to surrender to the spiritual master. And they engaged him in doing the welding work for Prabhupada's Palace of Gold.
Wow.
So I don't remember the exactitude of the story. Yeah. But Prabhupada wanted to create association of devotees so that we don't have to associate with the non-devotees. We're sentient beings. By nature, we need association. That's part of our nature. Krishna himself, he's never alone. He's always surrounded by his devotees. When Durvasa Muni was being instructed for his own welfare by Lord Narayan, that by acting against Durvasa Muni, you've acted out of self-envy. You have to go and apologize to him. I can't do anything for you. I'm under the control of my devotees. And Prabhupada says in the purport in that section, in the 4th chapter of the 9th canto, that the Lord is completely independent in achieving his own happiness and fulfilling his own desires. Yet at the same time, he requires his devotees to increase his pleasure more and more. And then he lists the topmost devotees, Srila Prabhupada, Nanda Maharaj, Mother Yashoda, the cowherd boys, the cowherd girls. They help the Lord enjoy his pleasure more and more. Similarly, this Krishna consciousness movement is an attempt to expand the Lord's pleasure more and more by increasing the number of devotees. Anyone who helps in this effort of spreading this mission, like the Lord's pure devotees, becomes a controller of the Lord. The Lord wants to be controlled by his pure devotees, controlled by their pure love. So again, back to this point, this sadhana of preaching that Prabhupada has demonstrated in the most heroic way himself by coming here in 1965, 69 years old. We have the monument outside, on the Jaladuta. So much struggle, so much incredible empowerment, so much giving himself for preaching. Prabhupada would say, save them, save them. This is the most recommended path to our own complete perfection and for pleasing Krishna in the greatest possible way. So I think we should stop here. We've gone late. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki Jaya. Shri Shri Radha Gopi Vallabha Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhaja Devi Ki Jai, Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Hare Krishna.
Jai!